I have heard you say before that you prefer companies, not you necessarily that you won't invest in business to consumer, but business to business, and when there's technical professionals in there as well. So perhaps you can describe in a bit more detail why you like those businesses, how that selling process benefits the company. And I think a really good example here that you've given before is the FANG stocks, because they're business to consumer. Like we all know the big tech companies. So a lot to unpack in that question. But I guess where we can start is why you like the business to business or the technical professionals.
Yeah, and if I'm a business selling to another business, well, that's a great start. If I'm selling to the procurement department, the conversation is going to revolve around price. Now, a better place to be is if I'm selling to a user of my product, and particularly if it's a technical user. Imagine I'm selling to an engineer. Imagine I'm selling to a chemist. Imagine I'm selling to somebody on the factory floor. Imagine I'm selling to the CIO. And for those people, the conversation is going to be around much more about what value can I bring, how can I help them solve their problems, how can I help make their processes more efficient, how can I improve the quality, reduce the defect rate, and price is going to be a much smaller part of the conversation. And well, let's talk about Nordson. So Nordson was founded by Mr. Nord and his sons in Cleveland, Ohio, 4 or 5 decades ago, and they dominate the world market in a product or process called hot melt adhesive dispensing. So we can imagine glue in a liquid form. And where might you find that? Well, inside your mobile phone, there's lots of components, and the mobile phone company is trying to pack a lot of components into your phone. So very efficiently gluing them together is important. We don't want them to slip and move around. We might want the phone to be waterproof, so the glue is very important. And so what you'll find Nordson doing is supplying equipment that can create micro dots, about 600 per square inch, as thin as a dollar bill, in a very precise, highly engineered process on a mobile phone manufacturing plant. Now, you might also find them at Procter & Gamble. We're making nappies. Now, the glue in this case is going to be sprayed into the nappy. Now, it's very important that works well. Any parent would know that if there's not enough glue to bond the product together, that's bad news. And at the end of the process, there's going to be a cardboard box. It's got to get folded and bonded together. So again, we're going to inject some glue into the process to bond those cardboard boxes together. Now, part of the magic of that business is Nordson doesn't sell to a distributor. They don't sell to the procurement department. They'll have their own engineers on the factory floor with the Apple manufacturer, with Procter & Gamble, with other, maybe an automaker, which is using the glue in bonding the tail lights onto a car. And that ability to sit with their user is a very valuable place. It means you're hearing directly from the user problems that they're having, problems that they're trying to solve, products that they're trying to create where you can play a role, and that creates a feedback loop. I'm going to tell my R&D department what things we need to work on. I'm going to tell them what problems that they're having, and it's a very difficult position for a new entrant to unseat. The engineer doesn't want to have 5 people calling on a day with alternative products. You're the trusted guy who sits with him or visits him and helps to create solutions to improve his life, improve his products and processes. And look, another example is Accenture. Now, if we go back a couple of decades, what that business was all about, well, let's put a big ERP implementation into a big corporate customer, imagine Unilever or Nike, and at the same time, we're going to rip a whole lot of costs out and send the people to India or offshore to a less developed country. Now, if Accenture hadn't evolved what it does and was doing today what it did 15 or 20 years ago, it would be a lot less relevant to its clients. But what's differentiated Accenture from some of its bigger peers like an IBM or some of its Indian outsourcing companies is it's continued to evolve and become increasingly relevant to its clients, such that when it's not selling services to the procurement department, we're the cheapest guy to do your job, they're pitching to the board of directors, to the CIO, to the CEO. It's a very IP-rich company now, and it's relevant in many more places in a large organisation than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And we can validate that by saying, look, how long do they keep their customers for? Well, 97 of the top 100 customers have been customers for more than 10 years. And they sign $100 million and plus contracts with many companies, and they're deep, enduring relationships that are very hard to unseat. They're profitable, and they've also grown at a very attractive rate. They've grown at about twice the rate of GDP or twice the rate of the end market over a long period of time. That's another validation that they're continuing to do more things with their existing customers and win more customers. And that's another example of that direct technical relationship. They're not being intermediated in the way that Danone sells yogurt to Woolworths. Accenture provides services to at the very highest level of their organisational customers.
I think that's a fascinating insight, because oftentimes, at least in recent times, maybe there's a bit of recency bias, but we think about companies as they supply mission critical services, and we think naturally, many of us, maybe it's just myself, but we think software because it's so sticky. But you've managed to find a collection of businesses that actually have those sticky relationships that aren't necessarily in this quote unquote high tech space. And I think that's a tremendous achievement, because they're not exactly easy to filter for. You can't almost quantify that relationship, right? So how do you go about finding these companies?
Well, if we also filter by profitability, now we can use a database at Bloomberg or a FactSet and say, look, just from the industries that we're interested in, show me the companies that have earned profit margin or return on capital above a certain level over a long period of time, and that's going to be quite helpful. But it's also wide reading and reading with the right mental filters to identify the businesses that sound like the businesses that we're attracted to. Like a good example is Compass Group, the world's largest contract catering company. They feed 20 million people a day through 40,000 restaurants, including Wimbledon, so sporting arenas like Wimbledon, National Gallery Victoria, and Google corporate campuses. They feed every Google employee in the world, hospitals, universities, remote mining sites, defence facilities. Now, they have a customer retention ratio of 95%, which means they keep their customers on average for 20 years. In fact, in the United States, the retention rate's 97.5%. So that's quite special. And what's helped them do that is a very clear focus on what they're good at. They don't try and add on services into a contract that might be peripheral to the core service of catering and feeding your employees. And so a clear focus on what you do well, and we try and reflect the same mentality in our business, and a really clear focus on what they're there to do for their clients. And when you've got wage inflation and food inflation, they see it as their responsibility to create productivity and efficiencies as much as possible, and only go to their customers to ask for price increases as a last resort. And so customers can depend upon them to be efficient suppliers. If we're going to outsource this, we want to know that we're not going to bite us back by egregiously increasing prices. So a real focus on what they do well, a real focus on delivering great client outcomes, has produced the sort of economic metrics that show up when we're filtering for good businesses.